So Joshua Henry, I'm glad you've taken some time out to talk with us. I should state up front that I'm a big fan because I have seen you in countless numbers of shows. Hamilton, Shuffle Along, the Scottsboro Boys, which is a show that will linger in my heart and soul for the rest of my days. I mean, it goes on and on. So thank you.
Thank you. Greg.
So I want to start by asking you about something that Harold Hill says in The Music Man, which I believe is a character you know fairly well. And he said, a man can't turn tail and run just because a little personal risk is involved. And it strikes me as though that is the journey every actor takes to try to get on Broadway. And I'm wondering, what are the kind of risks that you feel you've taken that have been most successful for you in getting this career that you have now?
I love that quote. I would say one of the biggest risks that I took was when I was doing In the Heights. And it was my first Broadway show, Lin-Manuel's first Broadway show. We had just won the Tony Award for Best Musical. And I had an opportunity at that point I was in the ensemble, and I had the opportunity to go do a principal role on Broadway in Godspell and play Judas. So I decided, I to leave the, I don't know if you want to call it cushy, but the show was going to run for a long time. But I was like, oh, I definitely see myself as a principal. So I decided to put in my 4 weeks notice, leave and go do Godspell. And this was in 2008. Long story short, what happened to the economy happened. Boom, the marquee was up, and the show lost its investors, and it didn't happen. So I find myself in between these two amazing things, just right in the middle of a valley. That's one of the biggest risks I took. And I think I'm so glad that I took it early on, because it showed me the highs and lows of the business and how I need to find something to sustain myself beyond the highs and lows. So that was a big risk that I took.
Well, the show that you're going to be doing at the Soraya is a celebration of Broadway. And I'm wondering, when you think of Broadway as it was, back when you were doing In the Heights, and Broadway as it is today, pandemic aside, if that's possible, what do you miss most from the way it was, and what do you like most about what it is now?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'll start with what I love about what it is now. I think we're just much more aware. We're much more aware of bringing lots of voices to the table, creatively and management-wise and producing-wise. We're much more, for instance, Black folks are much more in control of their narratives and the way that they run their shows. And I feel like that, and other groups as well. Like, I think that's really important. What do I miss about what was pre-pandemic or even 2008? For me, it was just this incredible community. It's still an incredible community, but what struck me when I just got here was how it was just fun. It was just absolute fun. I came from Miami, Florida, and coming up to New York in 2006, it was just this world of wonder. And I think now it's not just fun for me anymore. It's, trying to do the right thing. Of course, it's also fun, but now I'm much more aware, and I'm much more strategic in how I'm trying to amplify different voices. And I think that's where we are too. We're more aware than we've been.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up, Black folk being able to have more say in what's going on and what they're doing. It struck me in particular as very progressive that you would get cast as Harold Hill at a Christian school in Florida. I mean, those are things that all seem to defy the stereotype, at least of what we could expect. So it seems to me as if you got a view of possibilities well before Broadway did.
That's a great point, Craig. And I was very fortunate in that my graduating class was like 20 students. So this small private Christian school, had this teacher, Birgit Judapal, who was like, you know what, you do this. You're the right person to do this. And I think that opened my eyes, even when I got to New York. And then I saw someone like Taye Diggs in Wicked, which is my first Broadway show that I ever saw. those two events made me think, you know what, I know what I can do, and it's many things. I don't see myself as just one person. I'm not just playing, run and tell that, or just like Showboat or Porgy and Bess, which I love, but I saw myself as many things. And I have that little private school in Florida to thank for that setup.
It's interesting. There's so much dialogue about representation. And as somebody who cares deeply about the performing arts and about Broadway, I feel like there's a lot of pressure being put this season on plays by, marginalized writers and directors, because I can easily say the powers that be saying, well, we put 10 shows up on Broadway and, only one of them is still running. Isn't that a lot of pressure to put on, a group of artists to try to do a course correction in the way things have been done?
I mean, I think it's an amazing thing that artists of color have been given these incredible chances. And I think it's the right thing. I remember in 2016 when Hamilton came, everyone thought we were just going to sing Kumbaya. It's like, okay, here we are, we've made it. And so this notion that when one show happens to be this blockbuster, or when several shows get a chance and, only one of them survives, our work is there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think it's all worthwhile. And I'm grateful that Broadway has in many ways taken a look at themselves. In many ways, they've been forced to take a look at themselves. And I think that work is still continuing.
Well, you've been in shows that have been wildly successful and shows that didn't have as successful a run. Is the passion any different going into those? I mean, you sometimes with a show whether it's gonna fly or not, and other times you just sort of go, oh, maybe this one wasn't the right choice. I mean, do you get a sense, or is the spirit the same?
You do get a sense, but sometimes it doesn't. I'm gonna give you two examples of two shows that I thought were incredible. Scottsboro Boys. I was like, oh wow, this is gonna change the world. And it did change the artistic landscape of Broadway and beyond, but it was just so ahead of its time. I think the audience weren't, for whatever reason, it didn't catch on. But then there's a show like Shuffle Along on 2016 that also, was like right up there with Hamilton and doing really well. And then that closed down as well for a number of reasons, but you never know really. I mean, sometimes, if I've been in some shows that I was like, okay, well, I like the music, but the script is not great. So, but the equation of a hit is a really hard thing to come about, especially when it comes to musicals. So I'm grateful that I've been in, some incredible shows. Like, it feels good when you get into like a Hamilton, and I'm excited to sing some of those songs at the Soraya coming up soon. That's a feeling that is very rare. I think it's like one for every, I don't know the numbers, but it's less than 5% of musicals have a chance of being a hit. So it feels good when you're in one.
Well, I want to talk about Scottsboro Boys for a second, and I'm going to bring up Carousel Change as a point of reference for that, because I saw the original production of Carousel Change 3 times because I found it impossibly moving. And I felt the same way about Scottsboro Boys. I recently saw the revival of Carousel Change, and I saw audiences embrace it in a way that they didn't when it first came out, because it's all so of the moment right now. Do you feel like Scottsboro Boys is going to be like Carousel Change, or like many of Sondheim's shows, that it's going to take some distance and some time for audiences to catch up with what that show is?
100%, Craig. I think when Scottsboro Boys came out, and Carousel Change is a great example. It depends on the moment. It depends on what's going on. The audiences in 2010 didn't want to hear about this true story. I bet you now, if Scottsboro Boys was on Broadway right now, we'd be like, oh my goodness. So, art sometimes not mimics, but like lines up with what's going on. I think I'm so sad that I missed that Carousel Change, because I heard it was incredible. But Scottsboro Boys went on to go to the West End, win some Olivia's there. It's had a great regional life since. I did it again at the Amundsen Theater. Um, it all depends on the moment. And I do believe that if Scottsboro Boys came back right now, that it would be really well.
And that's the interesting thing for you as an artist, is to figure out what speaks not just to you, but what speaks to the time. I assume that there's a thought process that isn't just about this is a great role, but what does it allow me to say? What does it allow me to express? And I'm wondering how much that influences the choices you're making now in your career.
I think right now it is, to a degree. I mean, there's certainly times when I want to have fun. Like I said, this past year I did Waitress on Broadway in December, and that was just a fun score to sing. I love Sarah Bareilles. And then there are moments where I'm working on a show right now that I did in 2019 called The Wrong Man, and that we did at MCC, and we're trying to bring that forward. And that show, has a lot to say about this moment. And it's a beautiful thing when your talents and you can put yourself in a story, and people, your family story and your cousin's story, and really meet the moment in an authentic way and not force it. So it's both. I'm not going to just say that I'm only going to do things that that are going to uplift. I hope to, but I'm a complete human, and sometimes I just want to have fun. And sometimes I want to do something that I've never done before. And so I'm going to give myself permission to do those things as well.
Well, it's interesting because if one looks at your career, you've done such a good job of navigating what has been classic before and what's new. And I'm wondering what the experience was like when you first started rehearsing Soliloquy from Carousel.
Well, I was doing Hamilton at the time in LA. So 4 days a week, I would do Hamilton from like Tuesday to Friday. And then I would fly to New York, and that's when I would rehearse. And I remember the first time I sang it, it sounded to me, and I think to the music director, Andy Einhorn, it sounded a little poppy, because while I have classical chops, for a year and a half, I had been singing Hamilton. So I was very, the sound wasn't as tall, the sound wasn't as round, as resonant. And so I had to work hard to really bring everything back to a more classical place while I was doing Hamilton. And that, like, doing those two crazy roles in 1 week stretched me so much as a musician and as an artist. Like, it was an incredible moment. So singing that song, singing Soliloquy, is one of the biggest moments of my career, because I had to really rise up to meet that, and dig really deep.
And I would assume being a father helps do a song like Soliloquy.
Yes, my son Samson was born in the run of Carousel. He actually was born on the day off, on a Monday when we were dark. So I was like, yes, buddy, yes, nice job. All I can tell you is that the director said the performance after I had my son, it was never the same. I never sang the song the same. He didn't tell me that till after we closed, which I think was a good thing, because I just singing a song about the child that you have and what you want that child to be in the world while you have a newborn at home it was just a wild sensation how art can imitate life in such an intense way.
It's interesting. You mentioned that you had more of a pop sound, and I also know that you're on Billy Porter's album, The Soul of Richard Rodgers, which is completely a pop approach. And I'm wondering how important you think it is for projects like that to exist, so that people don't think that Rodgers and Hammerstein, or moving forward, even someone like Stephen Sondheim, is part of a previous generation or generations past, and that there's still something viable about what these songs have to say, and that young audiences should be paying attention to them.
The great thing about Stephen Sondheim music, Richard Rodgers music, is it's just phenomenal storytelling, phenomenal lyric, incredible melodic lines. And so me, as someone who grew up in the 90s, listening to R&B, pop, rock, jazz, I'm going to see great material through my lens. And I'm going to want to interpret it like that, just like Billy Porter or Michael McElroy, would want to in their lenses. And I think true, just incredible material that speaks to us will stand the test of time and genre interpretation. So yeah, I'm glad to be part of the school of thought that wants to bring those incredible composers as current as possible, just to people that don't know and just think that that's way back. And I hope that a lot of institutions now understand that. And we can sort of rethink some of these classics. They're fine on their own, but what we're talking about is bringing them to a newer audience. That's going to take a little more fine tuning and it's going to take people like me, to be honest.
Well, it's also going to take a lot of thought because, there are people who feel that, I mean, Bart Scher, who I know did such a great job with not avoiding what was uncomfortable about South Pacific, but using it to the show's advantage. Whereas other shows are maybe making changes without being as thoughtful about it. And I'm wondering what the responsibility is of artists moving forward in celebrating these older properties, maintaining the integrity of them, but also doing it in a way that is authentic to when they were written. Is when they were written and what they stood for at the time a valid argument for presenting a show today, or do they need to be changed?
I can't say, I mean, look, a show, for instance, recently I did a show, The Tap Dance Kid at New York City Center. And some of the dialogue in there feels dated. It talks about, one of the characters is referred to as like, yeah, that fat girl, and it's like, that was just the 80s, and a modern audience is not going to be able to hear that. Once they hear something like that, they just check out. So it's a matter of being sensitive to how we hear things in 2020. We're a little more sensitive and we're a little more aware. We're just different. We have a different, it's a different time. And so we can't do things. It would be unwise to not filter through material and seek out those triggering moments that will make an audience just check out and not listen to the incredible material that is there. And I think we do that in different ways now. We find, incredible writers to just go through the play and smart directors to see what resonates in a great way with modern audiences. And we have to have a sensitivity about it. Otherwise, we just lose incredible works from the past.
Right. And I think it's probably difficult to argue that was PHAT and not FAT.
Yes. Not pretty hot and tempting. It was
a lot of people only know Jonathan Larson through Rent. Obviously, Tick, Tick, Boom just resonated in such a beautiful way when the film was made. What stands out to you as what Tick, Tick, Boom was able to accomplish most that inspires you to move forward through your career?
I think the way that Lin-Manuel told the story of Jonathan Larson and his family and his friends was so authentic, Craig, to musical theater artists right now. The striving for something that, you think you're meant for, and what does that domino effect have on your family and friends? And I think, unlike, it's no shade on anything else that has shown musical theater life, but I think this really nails it. It's super hard and it's super complicated, and you have to make people sacrifice for you, just like Jonathan's friends did. And they, but one of my biggest takeaways is like how it's so community driven. If you feel like you have a voice, if I feel like I have a voice, I'm going to doubt myself sometimes, and I'm going to feel like sometimes I want to throw in the towel. If I have a kid, if I have 3 kids, I feel like sometimes my career can take a hit, but I need to rely and lean on my friends and my community to tell me, you know what, Joshua, you still have what it takes. You still have something special. And I think that's what Jonathan Larson's friends really showed him. And I think Lin really brought out that aspect of how community driven theater artists are, and how we need each other.
And no better example of that than Sunday in the movie, when you see people with an association with Jonathan Larson's and people who are just legends, you know, from Broadway's history, all participating in one song. It is a community, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, that scene is everything.
Yeah, it's pretty terrific. You mentioned that you have a number of musical styles that impress you, and what I love about the internet is it gives you a chance to put little videos out, you know, of songs that you love and things like that. Is there a consideration? Are you you know, prepping an album? Is that something that you want to do? Because I mean, your style is so adaptive to every genre of music, as evidenced by these videos. So I have to assume that there's a thought process here to do something more with it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I came out with an album last year in September called Grow that you can get anywhere you get your music. But I'm always working on new music. I'm working on album number 2 right now. And so right now I'm super busy on Instagram and super busy on TikTok, just getting inspired by, you know, people like kids that are at Berkeley, kids that are at University of Michigan, and, you know, just getting a chance to exercise my writing chops, because TikTok is a great way to collaborate if you don't know, with other artists. So yeah, I mean, one of the things I really appreciate and that I strive for is versatility. And you see that in my styles of music. You also see it in the shows that I've done on Broadway. You know, I set out to be the best singer that I could be coming out of the University of Miami, not the best Broadway singer, the best singer I can be. So that means I need to know about all these different styles. And I'm just endlessly curious. And I think the sky's the limit when it comes to growing your instrument. So I'm always excited about voice and different styles. And, you know, it's endless for me.
And isn't that the key to life though? Curiosity. I mean, that's kind of why I do what I do, is because I'm endlessly curious. Like I spoke to a classical music choral opera composer and finished 20 minutes before I spoke to you. I think it's just, without curiosity, I think we would just shrivel up and die.
Yeah, without curiosity, absolutely. And I again, to say that I think these artistic institutions need to understand that, you know, you can't just think about one style of music or a couple of just one decade of music. You know, you got to be curious. You got to talk to the kids and understand that if you want your art form to survive, you've got to be curious and see what's next, what folks are interested in, so that there can be a bridge between what is and what was.
Well, there also has to, you know, I think there have to be more brave producers too, because I don't think that what theater, whether it's plays or musicals, is lacking is creative voices. What I think what I fear perhaps is a better way of putting it, is that what we lack are producers who are willing to take chances. And I'm wondering, you've been involved in shows, both new and revivals, what your view is on how Broadway can move forward, and if a lack of nerve, a lack of experimentation is part of what's going on Broadway right now.
I think you're right. Producers have to take chances, you know? And then we have to find, if those producers don't want to take chances, then we've got to find the right producers, you know? And I've been in the position where some producers want to tell the same stories and have approached me about that. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think we need that story right now. As much as that would be a great thing for me to shine and, you know, make some money, you know, and I realize I'm in a blessed position to be able to make some choices like that. But it's not just on me. It's definitely the producers. It's management of those producers. And the great thing is there are incredible organizations that are, you know, organizations like Broadway for Racial Justice, Broadway Advocacy Coalition, that are bringing some things to light in an amazing way that let producers know that, hey, this is how it's got to be moving forward if you want to use, you know, our services. You know, if you want to use, that's what it is. And producers are realizing that. Casting directors are understanding that now. I think this is a really big moment that is kind of trailed over from 2 years ago, that is still got some heat and some fire to it. So you're right. People got to take chances, and I think audiences are ready for it. I do think they are ready for it.
You know, it's interesting. Stephen Sondheim said the dumbing down of the country reflects itself on Broadway. The shows get dumber and the public gets used to them. That's as only Stephen Sondheim could say.
Just in a few words. Just
in a few. Yeah, exactly. But does he have a point?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I mean, look, we understand that what there is a market in which people just want to smile and they want to receive big spectacle. There's nothing wrong with those two things. They're important. But when you are, when Broadway is supposed to be a place of enlightenment, we're supposed to, I would hope at our best, we're also supposed to learn some things. We're supposed to shine light on issues that more people don't talk about, and I think we want to be that. We want to be the leaders of telling different types of stories that don't just make us smile, stories that make us cry, or that make us look at ourselves and examine how we're moving through the world, and how we may be, we need to challenge ourselves. How are we complicit in some things that are going on that need to stop? And I think that's part of art. Art has the power to do all of those things. So yes, when Josh, will go to the theater, I want to laugh. I want to see hear a major chord, lovely, amazing. But I also want to be, I also look at the deeper side of things, and I want to be challenged and I want to be moved. I think a lot of people do too. We have to strike that balance. It's great that right now there can be, a play like the Slave Play, and then there can be The Music Man, within close to the same season. I think it's an amazing thing to have both of those things. We just can't forget the importance of the series sometimes.
Yeah, I can't wait to be in New York and see Strange Loop, which I hear is amazing.
Yeah. Oh, I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
You're incredible things.
I've heard incredible things. Well, I want to end by asking you one last question. Do you remember your first audition for a Broadway show and the song you sang? And I'm wondering what it was and what your perspective would be on both how you think you performed it then and how you might perform it now.
Oh gosh, my first Broadway show was, it was off Broadway at the time, but it was in the Heights. So I sang the song "Hear Me Out," and that was a song that Benny sang to Nina's dad, to be like, "Hey, listen, I can handle some more responsibility, and I can handle your daughter. Just trust me." It didn't make it to Broadway, but that song was, it's very hip hop, R&B, and it's funny that the song, the title "Hear Me Out," means so much more to me now. As I have a hat that I was just wearing called, it says "Be Heard." So like, hear me out. Now I think about it, it's in terms of Broadway, it's like, I want to be heard in a different way now. I want more voices to be heard. If I'm going to sing that song now, though, oh gosh, it would mean it just, I actually should, you know what, Craig? I think I'm going to cover that. I'm going to cover that song. I'm going to put it on TikTok because I haven't thought about it in a little while. And I'm going to text Lynn and I'm going to be like, yo, check this out. I'm so glad that you brought that up. Hear me out.